What's up? It's Wicked.
This is Maestro,
We're here today to talk all about grow lights. This is episode 1.2.
and we're going to let you guys know what type of grow light might work best for you and your setup and your environment, what you got going, because each one kind of has its own benefits depending on what you got.
Definitely do, Maestro. Can you list off a few types of grow lights?
Yeah, you got the LEDs, those are real common now. You got high intensity lights like metal halides and high pressure sodiums. Then you got fluorescents. And there's a few more advanced kind of not as popular. I don't know if I'd say advanced, but just newer technology or different out there.
There's definitely CMH, right, which is listed under HID as well. And then there are plasma lights that I know a lot of people are repping these days. And within LED, there's also a bunch of different technologies. So I think we should just break it down one at a time and kind of go through them slowly so we can help people understand them a little better.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. All right, you want to
Okay.
get into the different types of LEDs first?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the different types of LEDs. So I know there are medium powered LEDs and COBs. I know about those two specifically. Um, what do you know about LEDs, or maybe choosing the right LED board for you?
Yeah, for me, I'd say LEDs come a long way in the last 10 years, a lot. You see everything's kind of all the same color now. 10 years ago, it was all purple,
Yep.
but I personally like the full spectrum ones. They give off more of a white light, it looks like to the eye, and but if it's a full spectrum one, it's going to be giving you a good range of all the colors that you need, and those are the ones that I like personally. Full spectrum LEDs. Almost all the companies are using very similar um, diodes and boards, drivers, and all that stuff. It's almost a lot of the same stuff. There's minor differences, and some might be using one thing and then a different, but um, just a basic full spec LED is what I like.
Yeah, sounds
Use
good.
you know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Full spectrum LEDs are the way to go. They played around with a long time. Like NASA came out and said they could grow lettuce under LEDs that were different colors, and all of a sudden that fad kicked in, and everybody was running purple lights. Not realizing that it really wasn't optimized for cannabis growth. Um, so yeah, I would definitely stick with a full spectrum LED product. They call them medium powered diodes, is what I would stick with. Usually they're small little diodes. They're scattered all over a board or on a long strip. Um, and this would be great for if you're concerned about power usage, number one, which we all should be. If you want good canopy penetration and not worry about heat quite as much, maybe that's an issue for you. Um, and also just growing some of the finest herb on the planet. I mean, I've seen a lot of LED gardens in the past 5 years just pumping out some amazing medicine.
Yeah. In terms of quality, I don't see a difference. And like you were saying with the different layouts of the LEDs, they have the board styles, which is like you said, you'll see a lot of the different diodes next to each other in a panel, or you'll see a run of them where it's a strip where it might be one all the way down or two all the way down or whatever, and then a series of light strips. Um, I would probably recommend the light strip ones versus the panels personally. If you're trying to have the best coverage you could, most consistent, I feel like that's the way to go.
Yeah, I think you're right. If you have a big space, especially, or say something bigger than like a 4x4 tent, it's super important to get that light spread out. And I think those bars really help with that. If you're in a smaller tent, like a 2x4 or something like we were talking about in the last episode, I don't think it's really quite as necessary to go with a super spread out light because you have so much reflection in a small area.
True. Yep.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about wattage with LEDs because that's a big topic. Um, in a 2x4 tent, I would recommend like 240 watts, no more than 400. Um, what size light would you run in like a 4x4 or a 5x5 area?
Mm, maybe go up to like a 600 watt or a 500 watt light, but I mean, in my experience, um, the light can go up to 100, but I haven't yet to have to run my light at 100%, and my plants are like looking good, you know. So like I don't see a
Okay.
reason. I really don't see a reason to turn it up if it could risk causing herms potentially, or I can get a really good run without the herms and run less power. I mean, I think we're just kind of being maybe trained to use as much power as we can and push the plants harder than they need to, and maybe not everything can run like that. You know, like for what I got, like these genetics, like the max DLI or whatever, like is I mean, like I'm finding that new barrier, but you don't want to go too much too fast and break your whole run. I'm using less. I'm at 50%, and I don't really know if I'm going to turn them up.
So you're using 325 to 350 watts for about a 4x4 area right now.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's a good number, and I think a lot of people are definitely pushing their LED lights a little too hard for their plants. A lot of these newer lights put out over 2,000 ppfd, which is an insanely high number, 12 inches from the canopy. So I think it's really important to have good canopy height or height from your canopy, at least if you can, 2 to 3 feet. Or, like you're saying, make sure you dial your wattage down. That way, the top sections of your plants are getting enough light to actually get them sunburned.
Yep. You know, it's using less power too. They may think it's not as easy to hurt the plant, but like you were saying, there's a lot of the active energy from the lights being put out by this low watt, so it's easy to push the plants a little too hard with it, especially if your room's not running hot enough to metabolize the nutrients with the LEDs.
Yeah. And then that's one of the things. LED lights, the reason they're so great is because electrical energy to light energy, the most efficient. So a 600-watt light is putting out the same light energy as maybe 1,000-watt HID light. So it's just something to take into consideration that sometimes you don't need quite as much as what you think.
Yeah, but that gets us into the next type of light, like a HID maybe, or a high pressure sodium metal halide, or like you were saying, compact metal halide. Like those lights, they give you some heat, so they help the plant metabolize because they're giving that surface temp to the leaf. You know,
Yeah,
and
they have a radiant type heat, and it's definitely helpful in certain situations, especially if you have a cold basement or anywhere that you can't maintain over 70 degrees.
yeah, totally. And they're powerful lights, like you know, like they're given the power. Like those are important to kind of get at the initial height you want them to right out the gate because they're unless you have a way to control it, which some people do, but just say you have the basic like light setup, plug and play kind of thing, like you got the light, you want to make sure you have it like probably 4 feet over your plants. I don't
Yeah,
know.
you get
A CMH is different. I don't have actually much experience with CMHs. I just know about like metal halides and high pressure sodiums.
no, CMHs are pretty much the same technology. And I don't know the exact science behind it, but it's definitely an HID bulb. It uses a different light spectrum, as far as I know.
Okay.
It throws out more of a full spectrum light like our LEDs do that we utilize, which is where they're beneficial because, especially in later flowering, it's been shown time and time again that introducing a blue spectrum into your plants can help increase resin content.
Hmm. It's good to know.
Yeah, and it's also nice to have a little bit of the red spectrum in your vegetative state to just give your plants a little more bushiness. If you look at it, the sun has a full spectrum. You know, every available source of light is coming from the sun. So the more we can mimic that, I believe the more we can really tone our plants into the highest performance.
Yeah.
But that's why CMHs are great, is because they are a way wider spectrum of light.
What do you think about like CFLs?
CFLs are interesting. They hold a place for maybe like a first time grower trying to keep, some small plants benching. Um, they're not really for anything serious. If you're going to do, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to start putting your plants in a tent or you're going to take this hobby seriously, a CFL is underrated and you would get much better performance out of like maybe an LED strip or even a fluorescent strip.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because a compact fluorescent, you're talking about the spiral ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the compact fluorescent is a single bulb in a single area. You got to think about the surface area it's keeping up, and it's only shining outwards. Where if you have a long tube of the same wattage or similar wattage, it's spreading that light over a much bigger area, and it's just way more efficient.
I'm not sure if it was a CFL recently though. I think at a grocery store, or maybe it was at Home Depot or something. I did see like four growing. It was like a big bulb, and I think it was like a big CFL type bulb, but it was like probably better spectrum than just like a basic CFL. Because I don't know, it's interesting. Even at Home Depot now, you'll see like all stuff, different types of grow lights. Like I would probably stay away from the LEDs from Home Depot personally, unless they say full spectrum, because a lot of the time those are like these crazy like pink and blue colored ones, and they really mess with your eyes.
Mm.
But uh, there's just a lot of options out there.
Yeah, I think as far as buying grow lights, there are a ton of options out there. And I think the best thing you can do for yourself is go on a reputable website or ask a friend of yours and look at reviews, do some research. But I also recommend don't go out and just buy the most expensive thing. And also don't go out and just buy the cheapest thing because you think it's going to work just as good. You really need to do your research, and there are great deals out there where you can spend, a quarter of the price on the same equipment, but you just really need to do your research.
Yeah, it's important to do your research for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about temperatures in our grow room with our grow lights. I know we talked about HIDs giving a little bit of different, like radiant type heat off the light.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most efficient temperature that you found for LEDs in your space?
Running them, I like to be above 75 and below 85, and that's consistently.
Okay, and that's in veg and flower.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I found too. When I first got into LEDs, I was in a basement growing, and I had some other HID lights, and at first I was really frustrated because all my plants were looking like sickly kind of underneath the LEDs, and I wasn't really sure why for a long time. When I say a long time, it was like 2 cycles, which in growing is a long time.
Yeah.
You
Especially
know,
best ones. It's like an eternity.
it can be an eternity, especially if your plants are looking a little weak and you don't know why and you're trying to figure it out. So eventually, I don't know if somebody had told me or I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I started raising the temperature in my room more and more, and it became really apparent quickly that the plants do not metabolize well at all under LEDs under temperatures below 70 degrees.
Yeah.
So the plants were just struggling to stay alive. And it's amazing because under HID lights, I feel like 65 is completely acceptable.
You definitely can. I mean, even in like the earlier stages in the cold winter start and stuff, it can take it. And later in the life, if you cut the lights down a little bit and the temps like week 6, if you're on an 8-week strain or something, then yeah, they still do well, and still grow. It's interesting because those rooms are so different compared to like what I'm used to now, because they're like much darker feeling with those lights on, especially when you got it colder in there and stuff. It just feels like a fall night or something.
Yeah, yeah, I do. It is a different color. I have some verticals that I hung up in a veg space. So when I say a vertical light, it's actually an HID light that hangs down from the ceiling. That way it spreads light 360 degrees the whole way around. And then we have racks that are set up around the lights so we can have smaller veg plants and just really utilize our space better. Um, but I have one metal halide and one HBS next to each other just to get like a wide spectrum in veg. And it's amazing walking into that room and seeing the difference in color, just like you said, between the LEDs or sunlight versus the metal halide and the HVS, because they're so far on the opposite spectrums. One's like completely orange and red, and one's like bright blue. And it just really messes with your eyes.
It's crazy. Those blurple ones were the worst though. They would make your eyes see green after.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not good to look at any light source while it's on. And I always recommend using sunglasses of some sort when you're around grow lights because it could possibly cause long-term issues. Um, I don't think there's been enough studies around that to really say, but anything that is too strong, anything that is strong enough to grow a plant, you shouldn't be looking directly at.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel sometimes I feel like I can feel the effects a little bit, but who knows?
You would, yeah, but we always recommend everyone wears glasses
Oh
in
yeah.
their grow fence or
Uh,
their grower.
Sometimes you just forget to, and you end up being under a light for 10 hours.
We don't recommend that.
It's not
We recommend you wear sunglasses.
recommended.
Okay, cool. So, we talked about temperature of LEDs. We said a range of 75 to 85. The whole way from clone, the whole way through harvest is fine. And towards the end of the plant's life cycle, you could decide to dial that back towards the 75-degree range, right?
You're saying like when you're trying to finish the plant off?
Yeah, like in the last 2 weeks of a plant's life cycle.
I mean, that's everyone's got their own. It can be. It totally depends. It can. There's so many reasons that can vary, and that's because do you want it to be purple? Do you want it to stay green? Do you want to maximize production? Are you okay with what you got already at week 6 and it only going at 50% of the speed for the next 2 weeks and maybe just focusing on crystals and terps? And I mean, like, it's still going to do that if you don't change the temp and make it purple too. So it's like debatable and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not afraid or against going down to 55, 60 degrees, 65 for like the last week or two. If as long as everything's there before, then I'm okay with that. But
Even under LEDs.
yeah, even under the LEDs, yep. Because like honestly, like if you got like for me like a nice healthy living soil, these plants are like always having access to everything they pretty much need in the soil as long as it's there. So like sometimes you'll have a hard time getting these plants to like finish up. Like they'll just want to stay green forever, and that's like when they're staying healthy and at the right temp. So like if you want to try to get them to ripen up and start eating themselves up a little bit, know they're flushing out because you're only watering, um, and they're in living soil, but you want to still have that flushing kind of effect, then you can get that by having them metabolize themselves, and they'll do that when it's cold.
You're right, 100%. If you turn the LEDs up and turn the temperature down, those things are definitely not going to metabolize anything but themselves.
Yeah,
Which is an interesting tech. It's an interesting technique to think about because, just like you said, most people when they're flushing, a salt system, they're trying to get the plant to eat itself.
yep.
So if we can do that with temperature and save our living soil and not have to kill our soil every time we go through a cycle, and you can still get that flushing effect, which is also debatable. And I see in my garden, I've never seen a need to flush an organic system as long as you're not over or force feeding any type of nutrients.
Well, and the reason I think that people flush is to like what get out excess minerals and heavy metal, like just excess stuff, right?
Well, there's a few ideas behind it, but
Well,
yeah, some people say it's to get the chlorophyll, some of the chlorophyll out of the plant because they like the leaves yellow. Some people say it's different salt buildups or different minerals, and really, nobody really knows. Nobody knows if white ash is from a certain thing. Really, white ash is from a good cure. It's from a good texture of material, a good roll, mineral content. There's so many things, but a flush is not guaranteeing you a white ash or that you're taking out any kind of metals or toxins or anything like that.
yeah, I don't think it is either. It would actually be nowadays. We got access to labs. We could tissue analysis material grown in the same substrate, grown the same way, and we'll just give it that old, we'll do it 2 weeks. No, like a salt fed plant, just like that. We'll give it 2 weeks of nothing but water, and then when it's done, we'll flood it for like 2 hours straight in a bathtub, like they used to, and and then we'll go get it tested and we'll compare it, and I bet you there's next to no difference, honestly.
Yeah, we'll have to check it out. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of difference. And to be honest with you, I think you're going to see less compounds than you would if you didn't slow the plant down.
Awesome.
Because in my opinion, if you're taking the nutrition away and the plant is still trying to live, then really you're just slowing down all those metabolizing processes, just like we were for lowering the temperature. In my opinion, I would keep that temperature at 75 degrees with LEDs. If you're running HIDs, I would try and finish your harvest off around like 65 degrees. If you're running CFLs or fluorescents, I would also recommend like 70 to 72 degrees. Um, so we went through the temperature you should keep your room, which with LEDs is around 75 to 85 degrees the whole way through the cycle. With an HID light, 70 degrees is your target, but you can go anywhere from 62 to 75 degrees. And all of these are just recommendations. If you're a few degrees off here or there, it's not going to kill your grow. Don't stress out too much. Just think about nature. Nature has tons of temperature swings. So if your tent swings a few degrees, it's not going to be a big deal.
Yep. Yeah, you'll just find maybe if it's a few degrees colder, it's gonna drink water slower, and if it's a few degrees hotter, it might drink water faster.
Yep. And you might see better growth when it's a little warmer or a little cooler. And that's where in your space, you really get to dial in your environment and your grow techniques of what you really like.
Yep. But there are always gonna be kind of a set of standards where no matter what strains you're growing, like there's gonna be a top and a bottom of most likely what it can handle or have good vigor at, really.
Yep, 100%. Very cool. So what we're going to talk about cooling, efficiency, and what type of heat comes off of these lights. So what do you think the coolest light out of these groups are?
LED or CF? Yeah, LED.
LED?
I almost said CFL, but I would say LED. Yeah.
Watt for watt. You are 100% right. I believe that LED would be the coolest running, most efficient light source. And when I say that, what I mean is turning energy into direct light using the same wattage.
So if you're using the same amount of wattage, you'll end up producing the same BTUs essentially.
Okay, so if you have a 600 watt HID light versus a 600 watt LED light, the 600
Yeah.
watt HID is going to produce less overall light output and have more losses just because of the system design than an LED. A 600 watt LED will produce more light with better efficiency. But
Okay.
it will
Okay.
have but it'll have a similar BTU output for the whole system combined. So it'll put out a 600 watt light will put out about 600 watts of heat into a room. But an LED light is transferring more of that energy into light.
I see. That's interesting. Know that 100. I didn't know that the wattage was like a formula towards heat, regardless of type of light you were using.
Yeah, energy makes heat.
Yeah. So like, if you're calculating, if you're trying to figure out, maybe how big of an air conditioner you needed based on your wattage or something. When it comes to LEDs, you may not ever even run all those lights at 100, so you may not need the BTU coverage or capabilities you think you do. Might be half of it, a little
Yeah,
more.
and I think that's a little bit of a misconception we need to talk about also is that LEDs produce little or no heat, which is not true. And something that maybe a way to phrase it is the reason most people would get cooling benefits from LEDs is if they go from 1,000 watt HID light to a 600 watt LED light. So now they're reducing their heat load and their energy efficiency. They're reducing by 400 watts.
Yep.
So that's where you get
That's
your heat savings because you're using 400 watts less of electricity.
so, but at the same time, um, they're using less electricity, but now they may have to compensate. Like, it's interesting because, like, the LEDs, like, you find that maybe they give enough ambient temperature to help keep a room at a good temp for, like, during the day cycle. Maybe your, like, environment's naturally in the right range, right? So then when the lights come on, it helps bring them up to an optimal range for daytime where they're photosynthesizing and using CO2 and stuff like that. But if you have a DU, that might, like, bring the temp up when it runs. So now you're running into like a heat problem. But typically with LEDs, you're never gonna have a heat problem. Not
I
like
don't
even
I
if
don't think I don't think we should tell our people that because that's really not the case. If you have a small closed up tent and you put an LED light in it, I can guarantee you it's going to overheat the space.
hmm, depends on the light, I guess.
No, it doesn't depend on the light. If you put 600 watts of heat in a closed up cell, it's going to heat it up over the temperature we want. So
Just
what you're
depends.
saying, it's all. it's all relative to the heat load in the space. So if you have concrete walls, like you're growing in a basement that's all concrete walls and you put a 600-watt light in the basement, you're never going to have to worry about cooling the room. You're going to have to worry about heating the room,
Yeah.
right?
Well, so yeah,
If
so
you
if you're in a
if you
cold,
put
you know,
yeah, if you're in a cold space like a basement or something like that and you have an LED system, you're going to have to worry about heating it. If you're in a space that's super insulated with little air exchange, you will have to worry about cooling your LEDs. Now, this is where you can get into things like mounting your drivers outside of the tent or your room. That helps a lot.
yep,
Um, but like I said, I would still be concerned about heat buildup no matter what type of light you're running. And it's really just about how much wattage you're putting into a tent or your room equals how much heat is being made. And then you can do some calculations and figure that out.
yep. Might be a little complicated, but if you guys have any questions, maybe we can help you guys if you want to ask.
We can do a more detailed video on, how to do heat calculations for lights
Yep.
and maybe how to figure out what size air conditioner you need, possibly for a room. We can talk a little bit about airflow on another episode. We're going to dive into each one of these topics more and more as we go on.
Yeah, there's like a more than 10,000 hours.
More than 10,000 hours worth for sure.
And
Okay, so as far as energy efficiency, which lights are the most efficient?
which lights are the most efficient?
Yep.
LEDs, like we said, right?
Okay, so we talked a little bit about energy efficiency and the heat that LEDs and HIDs produce when they're on. What's next, Maestro?
All right, so I think we should get into talking about which grow light might work for you the best in your setup or your tent or your environment, whatever you got, whatever space you got. Because like we were saying, depending on where you are and what time of year it is that you're trying to do this and stuff like that, how much insulation you may or may not have, certain grow lights are going to suit you better.
Yeah, 100%. And what I would say about that is, like we said earlier, if you're in a basement or a cold space and you have a really hard time keeping your area above 70 degrees, I would recommend going with an HID light inside just to make sure you have that leaf temperature.
Yeah, that would be beneficial for sure, honestly. Yeah, and if you do have an LED and stuff like that, you may just have to run a heater, like we were saying. Just to try to, because if you find that the plant's not drinking the water and it's growing super slow, and you're getting like discoloration on the leaves and purple stems and stuff, then you might just have to bring the temps up to about at least 70 degrees. Because if it's staying under 70 constantly with an LED, you're gonna see the plant move in slow motion, and it just might not take off until it gets like will take a very long time. I don't know how to put it other than that.
And really, what I want to push to people is, we're here to grow medicine that doesn't cost us an arm and a leg, right? So if you're running lights, and like I said, you're running 600 watts of lights, and you have to run a 1200-watt heater to keep your space above 75 to use LED lights, then it doesn't make sense to do that. And it makes more efficiency sense to have an HID light that you can run at lower temperatures and not have to run that 1200-watt heater.
So you're saying that the 1200 watts from a heater is equivalent to a 600 watt LED lights in power?
Yeah.
Sounds, I mean, it sounds so common and basic to understand, but to hear that and think of it like that, that's like, wow, holy crap.
And now it's not always, hey, let's add more light to heat the room up either.
Right.
Because we already know if you add too much light, it's not good for your plants.
Yeah.
So there's a balance there between using light to heat your space and getting to the point where it's like, okay, now I need to install some heaters.
Yeah.
So there's just a delicate balance. But like I said, I would never recommend in a space that you have a hard time getting it above 70 degrees, trying to put LEDs in that space because it's just like a heat sink and you're just going to pour money down the drain trying to keep the space hot when you could have an HID, like a ceramic metal halide in the room and have it 10 degrees cooler and your plants look just as good.
When you thought you knew it all. Why didn't you tell me this earlier?
I mean, it's just the things that, you don't think about efficiencies all the time. You want the best for your plants, you know? And you also think, hey, I want to be good for the environment. I want to use less electricity. But then you realize that LEDs need to run at a higher temperature. And when you realize you need to run at a higher temperature, now you need to put more heat in the room. So now I'm going to go buy an electric heater and put 1,200 watts of heat into my room. That's no light. It's nothing added to my plants at all other than cost to me.
Yeah. So LEDs are kind of like, they're a great choice for a lot of different things. It's just if you're running in a cold space and you have to turn on a bunch of heaters, like, I thought I knew it all, but I'm telling you, like, that's blew my, to think of it like that, that's crazy. Like, you're not saving money running LED when you have to run one, two, three heaters to heat a basement, maybe?
No,
Yeah.
it does not. It does not make sense. In that situation, 100%, I would recommend an HID light. It gives you some of that radiant leaf heat. It raises the leaf temperature up enough that they metabolize really well. And actually, the cooler temperatures preserves the terpenes too.
Yeah, but in veg, you really want to make sure you get your temps in at least the 70s so that they can get going. Because a plant that's got the temp that it needs will just explode.
No, I agree. It's important to have the optimal temperature with HID is 70 degrees. But if you can't get your room up to 70 degrees, because I know a lot of people that live in the Northeast are growing in their basement. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times the basement just wants to stay at like 60 degrees. It's underground. It's got a bunch of block walls. It's sucking all the heat in all the time. So, like I said, I would recommend, especially in a basement situation, HID wins.
Sounds good.
So how about so now we know if you're a basement grower, you have a hard time keeping your temperatures above 70 degrees. Recommend going with an HID light. Other than that, to be honest, pretty much all of my other recommendations are gonna be LED.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of people doing mixed spectrum rooms as well. So maybe some people can, maybe that can be a benefit for you, depending on your setup.
Yeah, mixed spectrums are great, and also getting more efficiency out of HIDs using light movers is really cool and fun. I've done that in the past. But
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, if you have an area you can control the temperature on, I would recommend medium powered diodes of a board or the strips. For cloning, you only need about a 20-watt LED strip. For vegetative growth in a 2x4 tent, like we were talking about, I would recommend a 240-watt LED light. with a 4x4 tent, I would recommend, you know, 360 to 600 watts of LEDs. And then if you're going up from there, that's when you just start talking about utilizing more lights. So you're going to use 600-watt lights, but you're going to stagger them next to each other and lay them out. That way their pattern blends into each other evenly. So you can work with your light manufacturer usually, and they usually have layout charts with the PPFD diagrams and all that if you want to get a little more into it.
Yep. It can get interesting.
It can. It can. I would not recommend any spiral CFL bulbs personally. Um, I would I would say that T5s and different type of fluorescent tubes are great for veg growth.
Yep, man. I have seen I don't know if every grower still has them still, but I think I've seen T5 bulbs like that are like even four bloom and they got like full spectrum ones and the blue one test. You can like if your T5 usually they hold more than one bulb. Like I think it's like 2, 4, and 8 and 16 or something. Or maybe a 12 tube.
I think you can. I wouldn't, unless you have a fixture laying around and it's like, I don't have the ability to go buy a light right now, and I have this T5 fixture, I have these bulbs, I'm not going to spend any money, go ahead and use it. Your flower isn't going to be very dense. I can tell you that right now. I've grown under those T5 lights. I had an 8 bulb for about a year that I ran in the corner of a garden just to put a couple plants underneath. And the buds were definitely 50% the weight compared to LEDs.
Good to know.
But if it's just for a hobby and you have a free light sitting there and you just want to try to grow, hook that baby up and grow.
Yeah, that would be good. I agree.
Yo, so before we wrap this episode up, I'd like to talk a little bit about some innovative designs and some creative ways to use your grow lights and just be a little more efficient with your space. Maestro, what are some techniques you know about?
Um, I mean, like sometimes, like using like lights as supplemental lighting. Like maybe like you were saying, you have an extra light laying around. Maybe the side of your room isn't getting a ton of light over there or something like that. Maybe that light can't do it 100% for like a plant on its own, but maybe in addition, like adding that little bit of extra light in the corner or something like that can help.
Yeah, I agree 100% that supplemental light is really good. Like if you don't have quite enough light in the corner of a room or it's a little shadowed, adding a little LED strip or a small HID is a really good way to light up a corner. Something I'm really excited about and I've been doing for a few years is different types of vertical farming. And when I say vertical farming, like I was talking about earlier in the episode with HID lights hanging vertically from the ceiling, and there are some different cool tube options you can get with these. Um, but really the benefit of that is you can have plants 360 degrees around the bulb and get full use of all the light without any reflection, which is really important if you want the maximum efficiency.
Yeah, that would be cool to drop down a few extra lights like that.
Yeah, I mean, it really works well for me. I just say around the bulb, you could have 4 racks, each with 12-inch shelves spaced, maybe like 4 shelves on a rack. Then you have the ability to have almost foot tall plants filled the whole way around. Instead of when you look at it from the top, you would only be able to have one layer of plants.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
And something else I've been getting into is just a stacked grow, where we have racking and we have a layer of plants on the bottom rack, a layer of plants on the top rack. And we've been getting creative with this too, with using glass houses and using supplemental lighting, like you were talking about a little bit, but having them angled from the sides, and also different LED strips and things that we can put up underneath of the rows of the racks for light for the lower canopies. It was really interesting to just create different techniques and really not create these techniques. These techniques have been used in farming for quite some time. There's a ton of pioneers out there in all different agriculture industries that are doing these different technologies. But it's cool to innovate in our space and just really be on the frontier of optimizing space and energy for the future of cannabis, because realistically, we can't continue to suck down power like we have been. We need to be smart with how we use power, use the sun whenever we can, and stop pouring energy and money down the drain with bad practices.
Starting with too many heaters for your LEDs.
Yeah, let's start with too many heaters for your LEDs. Oh, it's so funny. It's like buying a Tesla that you leave the key on all the time and the heat on just in case you want to go drive it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Just a waste of energy. It's like you have good intention, but without the whole concept, it's just not all there.
I thought the inside of those things was a microwave, so I thought it heated up like instantly.
What, the Teslas?
Yeah, isn't it like a microwave on the inside?
Uh, be careful, Elon might watch this.
Elon! So times I said, hey.
All right, y'all, it's been a great episode. We talked a lot about lighting. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. Like, subscribe, you know the whole deal, so we can keep bringing you videos. It's been real.
It's a good one. Thanks for watching, guys.
Peace. All right.
Yeah. A whole cup of liquid LSD. I figured after the last time when I drank a vial, thinking it wouldn't do nothing else, I'd be good.
We do not promote the use of psychedelics directly on this channel, just to be clear.
It's alright. We won't include that part.